Welcome back to the channel. My name is Joseph Gutierrez, and this is covering compounding. In today's video, we're going to take a closer look at the fixed index annuity with the income rider. When we're getting ready for retirement, solving our income dilemma is imperative. Luckily, FIAs with the income rider can give us multiples more in guaranteed income than the so-called 3 to 4% rule ever could. In today's video, we'll get a better understanding on how income-focused FIAs work. We'll look at policy ledgers from our featured carrier, Nationwide. And lastly, we'll let you know what you need to look out for when putting together your own guaranteed income stream. So let's get at it. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the fixed index annuity with the income riders. First things first, we're going to get a good conceptual understanding on how the FIAs work with this income rider, and then we'll take a look at some of the ledgers in our featured carrier and things like that. It's important to get a good conceptual understanding first, because if we just look at a ledger, if you haven't seen it before, it's going to be very overwhelming with all these different columns of numbers and how they all interact. So first things first, let's take a look at a little whiteboard here. First, so one of the things that we're going to notice when we're looking at the FIA with the income rider is that there's going to be two separate accounts. Okay, so we're going to put a little dividing line between the two, which will become important as we go on here. But on one side, we're going to have our benefit base. Okay, so the benefit base is where the income is going to be derived from. Okay, goes into a little calculation and spits out whatever our income is going to be whenever we do decide to turn on income. On the other side is going to be our contract value. Sometimes it's called the accumulated value or the cash value. Okay, so this is just generally the contract value, as they like to call it. So the thing with the two different accounts is that they're related, but they're separated. Okay, they're related, but they're separate. So the major thing is that when we put in our funds into the FIA, let's say we put in our example today, we're going to use $400,000. It goes into our contract value, right? But as it appears on the benefit-based side, it's going to go through whatever kind of bonus features that the carrier may be giving us. In this case, with Nationwide, we're going to get a plus 25% bonus. So if we put our $400,000 into the annuity through whatever rollover or whatnot, on the benefit-based side, we're going to see $500,000. Okay, so it's the plus 25% bonus, all right? Very important. Every carrier has a different setup. Some of them have bonuses, some don't have bonuses, and kind of the math that goes behind it. But when we actually do look at all the different carriers out there, at the end of the day, it's what is the payout that we're getting at any particular age. Now, remember, a lot of these policies, a lot of these annuities do better if we defer for a few years, right? Because the other thing that goes into our calculation that we should be aware of is that after the benefit base gets its bonus and things like that, we're also going to get a roll-up rate. Okay, so the roll-up rate is a guaranteed increase in our benefit base year after year as long as we're deferring our income. Okay, so if we're, say, 60 years old and we decide to elect to turn on our income, well, there's not going to be much of a roll-up because we're turning on income immediately. While we're in our deferral phase, we can get this roll-up rate, and in this case for Nationwide, it comes in at 8%. In this case, simple interest. All right. So every year that goes on, we're going to take our benefit base after our bonus, and we're going to take 8% of that simple interest. In this case, it comes out to plus $40,000 every year. Okay, that goes on into it goes into our benefit base, and we do that over and over and over for however many years we decide to deferral. Okay, if we take income immediately, obviously we won't have the benefit. We won't have the benefit of this roll-up rate. But if we defer, in this example, we're going to assume about 5 years. We defer for a while, we're going to get our accumulated benefit base times whatever our payout rates or our lifetime withdrawal rate. Okay, so lifetime withdrawal rate. Okay, usually it's a percentage somewhere in the 5 to 7% range, depending on our age, and if it's joint or single payout. Okay, and then whatever that amount is going to be our payout, and this is guaranteed, right? Guaranteed for life, and very important. Okay, guaranteed for life. Okay, and in this example, we're going to be looking at a married couple, so it's a joint payout. Okay, so the different numbers will come into play here, but the main thing that we need to understand about these FIAs with the income rider is that whenever we do elect to turn on income, the payout will be guaranteed for life. So as long as we, and if it's joint income, joint payout is going to be as long as we or spouse are alive. So that kind of covers most of the benefit base, which is where most of our emphasis is placed on. On the contract value side, a lot of people will be like, well, what's going on the contract value side? I put it in my $400,000. What really is going on there? The contract value side for these income-focused annuities don't have a whole lot of meaning outside of a death benefit. Okay, assuming that you're using the annuity as it's supposed to be used for. You're not surrendering it early or anything like that. And I'm going to put in parentheses here as more of a residual death benefit. So what calculates this death benefit? Well, the contract value is essentially the death benefit at that given time. And we have some different factors that come into play. Just like all fixed index annuities, especially on the accumulation side, we're going to be usually tied to an index fund of some kind. Okay, we're allocated to whatever. It could be the S&P 500, could be a specialized excess return type index. Okay, where we're getting our crediting. So we're going to have, as a plus, we're going to have our index crediting. Okay, so whatever that index does, if it's the S&P 500, we have that. Usually we have that 1 year point to point. Okay, so from the beginning of the crediting period to the end, how does the S&P 500 do? And we usually apply it against participation rate and caps, so that kind of thing. Okay, so remember, the index crediting that we're getting is not necessarily, has nothing to do with the benefit base and doesn't affect our payouts. It's more or less the contract value and this residual death benefit. The other thing we have to keep in mind is that we also have a rider charge. So this is the income rider charge. Now, a lot of people will look at that income rider charge. It's like, well, I don't like to pay fees or charges or anything like that if I don't have to. Well, the important thing to remember is that this benefit base, these multipliers, the roll-up rates, all these different things, along with the guaranteed payout for life, is what this income rider is supporting. Now, there are annuities that don't have an income rider, but the payouts are going to be substantially less. Okay, and it's one of those things where the value of the fee or the rider charge that you're paying exceeds whatever this rider charge is, then it's a positive, right? And a lot of people look at it that way. Usually the rider charge is somewhere on the order of about 1 to 1.5 at the most, usually 1.2% of our contract value. Okay, and then obviously thereafter is going to be the base. The contract value is going to show our death benefit. So we got the index crediting that's growing our contract value over time, the rider income charge here, and that is subtracting from it, and then obviously what's left over is a death benefit. Now, the other important thing to know is that while we're taking income, we're also going to be subtracting that income from the contract value. So our death benefit, our residual amount of death benefit, will start to go down over time until it goes to zero. Okay, and that's kind of the play on how these FIAs work, is that we're going to continue to take income until the contract value goes to zero. And then after that point, we still continue to take the same amount of income because it's guaranteed for the life of the contract. This contract value / death benefit is basically there in case the annuitant or whoever's getting paid out passes away before they got the full effect, the full benefit of the annuity. Okay, so it's essentially the index crediting and all this other stuff. If we choose like a really good index versus a really poor index, what it ends up being is whenever this residual death benefit runs out. Does it run out in our early 70s? Does it run out in our late 70s, 80s? You know, that's kind of the main difference there for the contract value. So now that we have a good understanding of how this FIA with the income rider works on a fundamental level, let's go ahead and look at an actual ledger. We'll look at two different ledgers. On one side, we're going to look at the guaranteed ledger, and then on the other side, we'll look at a hypothetical ledger and kind of see the differences there. Okay. So next here, we're looking at our quoting software here, and we see that we have, let's go over here. We see that we have the Nationwide Peak 10, okay, one of our preferred carriers here, Nationwide, great carrier, A plus rated, AM Best. We're allocated to the S&P 500 index. This is a 60-year-old male joint payout. Okay, so 60-year-old male and a 60-year-old female, married couple here, and they're getting guaranteed income. Okay, through this bonus income rider. It's joint. Okay. So let's go ahead and look at the actual ledger. So whenever you look at life insurance ledgers or annuity ledgers, you're going to have a guaranteed ledger and then you're going to have a non-guaranteed ledger. Okay. Guaranteed ledger basically says that, you know, if we never get a gain that is tied to the index funds, or if we never get any kind of return that is kind of hypothetical in nature, what would the policy look like? What would the annuity look like as far as performance go? And then the non-guaranteed ledger usually looks at the last 10 years of performance. Okay, so when we look at this guaranteed ledger, what do we see right off the bat? Well, we see that we're about 80 or about 60 years old and we're putting in $400,000. And $400,000 shows up in our contract value, and we're not taking any withdrawals yet. And then our end benefit base, we see the $540,000. Okay, so remember the quick math on that, right? The 400,000, 400K times the bonus that we received, the 1.25 in this case for this particular carrier. And then we also add the 8% simple interest by the end of that year, that contract year. So that's 400,000 plus another 100,000 from the bonus, plus the roll-up rate, which is 8% on 500,000. That's $40,000 a year. And then you can see year after year, as long as we're deferring, our benefit base continues to go up. Okay. And then we see on this next line here, let's go and get this out of the way. And we see on our next line here, we see the lifetime withdrawal rate. See that the rate changes at certain ages, and that's pretty characteristic. The longer we defer, the better our payout rates will be. And then on this available lifetime withdrawal, this is if we were to take income for that particular year, we can see what we would have received. And we also notice here that we're taking income basically about 5 years out. And then we're seeing that we're getting the $41,650 every year there on out. Okay, so we see that in the annual withdrawal, basically age 65 on, we're going to get $41,650 year after year, as long as we and our spouse and our joint annuitant here, joint payout, are alive. Okay. At the bottom here, we can see it cuts off at contract year 25. But if we live for 50 more years, we're going to continue getting paid out that $41,650. We also see this rider charge here. Okay, so if we focus on the first year, that rider charge, $6,500 is subtracted from the contract value, but we notice that it doesn't affect our benefit base. Kind of important to understand that it's not going to affect our payout and how it's structured. And then we see cash surrender value if we were to walk away from our policy, and the death benefit happens to match the end contract value. Okay, so once you kind of get a good idea of just the basic structure, this is all pretty straightforward, pretty straightforward. And we can see that If we get no interest crediting, 0%, which is unlikely since we're tied to the S&P 500, but in this guaranteed sense, guaranteed if that we didn't get any return, our contract value, our death benefit would run out right around in our early 70s. Okay. Now that we have a good understanding on the contract, the guaranteed contract values, let's take a look at what the hypothetical current rates are. So in this case, this is with the index crediting with the S&P 500. They're just going to take the last 10 years or so and then just repeat it year after year here. We see that the only real difference here is the interest is the credited interest that we're receiving. So this is assuming a 6.25% cap on that S&P 500 and how it's doing. And then we can see that in good years, we're getting the 6.25%. And then in the bad years, we have that 0%, just like all the other fixed index annuities. We also see the important thing here is that even though we have varying different crediting levels, and we also have this rider charge, it doesn't change our benefit base. It doesn't change our payout rate. It doesn't change the amount of income we're going to make, which in this case, if we were to defer for this particular client, 60-year-old joint, they're going to get paid out the $41,650 guaranteed for as long as they live. Okay, very important. And the only real difference between this and the guaranteed value side is just the contract value and death benefit columns here. Okay, so a little bit better crediting, a little bit longer payout on the death benefit. Like we said earlier, the death benefit, the contract value is just there. So if we weren't really getting the full effect of the income that we're receiving, that there would be some left over for the beneficiaries if we were to pass away early. Okay, so that's kind of the main difference here. So that kind of rounds it out for the most part. One last thing that we want to kind of touch on here is that when we're looking at different annuities, we have a whole universe of different carriers out there, right? Different carriers, different math that spits out a different payout rate, okay, that's guaranteed for life. And it's best to work with an agent that has access to all the carriers so that we can get the best payout possible, as opposed to working with a financial advisor, a registered representative, or some other agent that only has access to a couple carriers, right? Because we see this a lot. It happens a lot where, these different advisors will get basically bonuses for placing their client with a particular carrier more often than not. So they'll favor a particular carrier, but it may not actually be the best for that particular client. Also, depending on when we decide to take income, certain annuities will perform better for different scenarios, and different carriers will be a better choice depending on when we decide to take income. So let's look at our annuity tool here and kind of get an idea of what we're talking about. And this is very important. It's one of the things that when you work with an advisor, you really need to have this spelled out to you so that you're making the best decision, because you could be leaving thousands of dollars on the table every year of potential payout that you're not getting because you didn't pick the very best. So if we look at our calculator tool here, we can see that this is a 60-year-old joint payout, 60-year-old in Kentucky, $400,000 like we did in our example. And we see that if we start taking income, nationwide peak 10 comes out on top at the $41,650, which is great, right? We also see some of the other carriers that are competitive, Equitrust, Global Atlantic, ClearSpring, Corebridge, also known as AIG, also look pretty good, okay? So they're not far off, kind of nipping at their heels, if you, so to speak. But the other thing that we have to know is that with these FIAs with the income rider, we can take income whenever we want, right? We can take it earlier, we can take it later, we can change our minds. All those different things can come into the calculus here. So what if our client wants to take income at age 63? I only want to defer for a couple of years. I don't want to wait till 65. Well, we suddenly see here that the top 5 or so don't include nationwide peak 10. We see Global Atlantic, F&G, Fidelity and Guaranteed Life, ClearSpring, Equitrust, North American, and so on are coming up on top. Okay, we actually have to scroll down quite a bit before we actually see Nationwide Peak 10 coming up on top. Okay, what about if we want to maybe work a little bit longer, maybe work as kind of a contractor for an old company or old firm, whatnot. And I'm going to take income on this particular annuity, let's say age 68. I changed my mind, not 65 anymore. Let's do age 68. What would that look like? Well, we can see we have different options that come up again, but we're seeing kind of similar carriers, seeing Equitrust, Clear Spring, North American, Global Atlantic, again, are the top ones. If we look down, looking for Nationwide on the list, well, we see that Nationwide, it's a different annuity product that comes up on top. Okay, and then we go down a little bit further and we see the Peak 10. Okay, so in this case, Nationwide New Heights was a little bit better in the payout. Okay, so this is pretty important stuff here, that when you're working with a um, when you're working with an advisor, whether it's financial advisor, registered representative, other insurance agent, that kind of thing, is that you have access to the full market, right? Because there's a number of carriers out there that will give bonuses and free trips and things like that to the professional for placing clients with their carrier, um, even though the payout may not be nearly as not nice, right? And we can see like 5, 10, $15,000 less income for working with an advisor that didn't put you on the top of the list as far as the most potential you could get. Now, one of the things that we like to do for our clients who are kind of looking at our best possible income scenarios with this FIA with the income rider is that we actually have a quote tool on our webpage where you can put in some of your basic information, the amount of money that you want to move into an annuity, your age, your state, things like that. And then we can go ahead and send you exactly what we see here on our screen on this annuity printout page here of all the competitive carriers. So you can at least know beforehand which annuities work out the best for your particular constraints. And it's just a service that we give to our clients here that are kind of looking to see what is out there for their particular idea of what they want to do for their retirement income planning. Okay, so it's free. We'll go ahead and send you a printout, and so you can look at what's the best out there and place yourself in the most advantageous position possible. Okay, thank you for watching today's video. We looked into the fixed index annuities with the income rider, and we looked at all the interesting effects of the income rider and how it produces guaranteed lifetime income. Okay, so income that we cannot outlive. Very important. Okay, we looked at a whiteboard where we kind of got an idea of all the different accounts, benefit base, and the account value, and riders, and all this other stuff, so that it supports this high in payout. Okay, we're not getting that 3-4% payout anymore. Now we're getting 7, 8, 10, 17% payout guaranteed for life by the annuity carrier. Okay, we also spent a little bit of time talking about when we're working with an advisor, what to look out for so that we can get the best possible payout and not fall victim to an advisor that wants to place us with maybe one of their favorite annuity carriers that has a higher commission level for them. Okay, and we also showed you how you can go to our webpage and get a free online quote and get a printout of the current annuity carriers that are giving the best payouts. Now remember, different annuity carriers, they're jockeying for position. Every year they kind of switch as to who's number one, number two, and there, and so on and so forth. So it's best to get a good printout, good view of who are the best and where you're going to get the highest possible payout. Okay, if you are looking to put together your own guaranteed income stream through that fixed indexed annuity with the income rider, feel free to click the link in the description. It'll bring you to our webpage where you can see much of our information, the annuity tool, quote tool, as well as a book now button. Okay, that book now button will take you to our calendar page where you can sign up for a free online consultation. Okay, during that first consultation, it's basically a discovery call. And during that discovery call, we'll go over your financial situation, what you're looking to do so that you can have a safe and secure and prosperous retirement. Okay, and we also put together a more complete retirement income plan proposal that we will show you usually during our second meeting there. and kind of give you the best possible combination of products so that you can fulfill your goals and have the retirement that you deserve. Okay, thanks again for watching. Feel free to click like and subscribe. Okay, ring the bell for future notification on our content coming out. And I look forward to helping you become retirement ready. Until next time.